So Noah built the ark. Everybody knows that Sunday school story, right? So Genesis 6, the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually, which is really a good first principle Bible verse to establish the fact that man is basically bad. I mean, look at that. That every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. It's actually interesting for Bible marking to follow up. I think it's Genesis 9 when they come out of the ark. God says he won't destroy the earth again because still the wickedness of man is great and the thought and intents of his heart is only evil continually. And all that's alive is Noah and his family at that point. So it shows that it's just built into us. This is the nature that we bear. So the Lord's sorry that he made man, and he decides to destroy them all. But Noah found grace. That word grace, you don't see that a whole lot in the Old Testament, but you certainly find it here about Noah, that he found grace in the eyes of the Lord because he loved God's ways, and God decided to save him and his household. And that's one of the things I think that comes out about Noah, is that Noah is very typical of the Lord Jesus Christ, in that he saved himself, and because of that, he was able to save the family. And that's what God does. He's willing to work with families. I think it's good to look in Luke 12 or Luke 17 and notice the New Testament commentary on the days of Noah. Because if I was giving a commentary on the days of Noah, I would have said, oh, the people were probably violent, they were probably ungodly, immoral, and all these things. But when you read Luke 17, or when you read, I think it's Matthew's account as well, what you find out is that as it in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. So it's like, it doesn't tell you that they were immoral. It doesn't tell you they were violent. It doesn't tell you all those things. They ate, they drank, they married wives, and were given in marriage. And then you get to the days of Lot. You find out, okay, likewise in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built, which are all normal activities that people do during the day, until the day that the Lord rained fire and brimstone down on Sodom and Gomorrah and destroyed them all. Even so, it will be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. So it's what I found interesting about this is that rather than emphasize all the immorality and the violence and the ungodliness of the people, what God does is he basically, or Jesus does right here in Luke 17, is he says, here's the root problem. The people were eating, drinking. They were so caught up in what they eat, what they drink, their marriages, given in marriage, and Lot's day, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. They were so tied up with all the things of this life that they cared about so much, they didn't have any time for God. And that led to their immorality and their violence and all the problems that they had. But the root cause was that they were so busy that they didn't have any time for God. And then that affected their life. So one of the great lessons I took from this is that we've got to make time during the day for spiritual things. We have to do this because it's so easy today to fill up your life with all the things you're caught up in, especially when you're parents of young children. We can get so hung up in making meals and cleaning up and doing all these things that cost us so much time. We go out and we buy stuff, and you can still buy stuff even though you're staying home. You can get on your computer and you can research all these things and be buying stuff on Amazon. We can buy and sell, and we can do all this stuff. And we get our lives just so busy with those kind of things that we don't have any time for God. And then it starts to affect our way of life because God isn't drawing us into his way of life. And therefore, we just naturally start thinking like the world. We end up thinking our natural mind takes over. So we have to take time to pray during the day, have Bible readings, go to Bible classes like this, Zoom study line, Sunday school. We've got to take time to help people in their spiritual lives. And there's so many options that we have today to do that. The Bible is available in so many different ways for us to get spiritual lessons We were just talking before class about how you can zoom into Bible classes all over the world during the day. And God's provided us all these opportunities. We just have to take advantage of them. So when you do read about the times of Noah, though, you find it in Genesis chapter 6 that the people were immoral. They were immoral at this time. You find out that they were violent in chapter 6 at verse 11, that they really were corrupt, very much like societies today. But the root cause was that they were too busy for God, too busy. And therefore, God was not influencing their lives. And if you take God out of somebody's life, inevitably, a lot of times it goes to whatever human nature wants to do. So it's interesting that the passage in Ezekiel 14 there at verse 14 shows you to what extent Noah was famous for having helped to deliver his family. Because when you get to the times of Jeremiah and Ezekiel, God says that in those days when the Babylonians came down and the Jewish community was so bad that he had to pull them out of Jerusalem and destroy the city and take them up to Babylon. He says that even if these three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they would deliver only themselves by their righteousness, says the Lord. And they were three famous people who had helped to save other people. Noah with his family, Daniel with his friends and others that he influenced, and Job with the three friends that he prayed for in the end. And so, God does save families, and he saves people because of the righteous that are alive today when righteous people pray for these folks and they ask God to include them. There are many times where God will do that, and folks are saved. You wonder, like, why does God work in families today? Why is it that he chooses to work with so many of our children and grandchildren and our relatives? Well, it's because in God's kindness and in his grace, he is willing to listen to the prayers of the saints and help to save those people. Sometimes he is, at least. He can't do it all the time, but he is willing to do that sometimes. So if the world had become so corrupt like this, how in the world did God bring a faithful family through all of this corruption? How do you do it? And you look at the solution that they have, you can imagine how the angels must have had some discussions about this. How are we going to save Noah's family? And they get them involved in a family spiritual witness project, one that took a long time, which, by the way, I don't really think it took 120 years. Those of you that have been learning all your life that Noah built the ark for 120 years, you can actually show, I remember years ago listening to or reading something from Harry Whitaker on this period of Noah's life, and he was able to show pretty clearly that it's actually less than 80 years, because the Bible gives us dates how old Noah, his kids were old enough to work with. So he already had his children when the whole project started, and we know that he went into the ark in like the 600th year. So you can actually establish that it was less than 80 years they spent building the ark, but it was a long time to build this boat. So God's solution is to put up a witness project that's going to take years to accomplish, and it gives them lots of time to see if they can have an impact on some of the people of their day. A lot different than when we looked at Lot on Sunday morning, where the angels came to Lot and said, "You got one night to go out there and find everybody you can in this city, and get them out of the city." Lot only had one night. Noah and his family had years probably working on this project. But God could have done it a different way. He didn't have to do it like this. He could have saved them in a different way and done it really quickly and had it all over in a week. But he doesn't. He takes his time. It's a long project, and it must have had an impact on this family, because this is the family he's going to use to rebuild the entire earth with humans and to rebuild his community. So he tells Noah to make himself an ark of gopher wood, rooms in the ark, cover it inside and out with pitch. And Noah spends years working on this ark. And you could look at this from the perspective of an ecclesial seminar project or a witnessing project. And so sometimes people do. We figure out, like, how much money did we spend on that project? And how many hours of time did we spend on this? You start to look at, well, how many converts did we get? And a lot of times it's zero. And you can get discouraged by that, or you can think like, well, that's not an efficient use of our funds, or that's not a good thing to do because nobody was converted. But look at Noah spent all this time building this boat, trying to influence the people of his day and save his family. And although he doesn't seem to make any converts from the world at large, he is able to convince his family to come into the ark. And he doesn't lose his wife like Lot did. So that's a good thing, all right? His obedience and his faithfulness did save his household. So don't ever get stuck in the rut of judging our witnessing projects by how many converts God gives us. It's not really a valid way to make a decision about whether that was a worthwhile project or not, because we can't measure how much that was able to help some of the other brethren and sisters, or their families, their kids, or other people that were involved, or to what extent today we're helping people to understand so that when Christ comes back, it will make a difference in their life. Don't get discouraged by the lack of converts, because Noah, for all this time, he didn't do so good. But when you do have projects like this, God uses a project with Noah and his family, a big public witnessing project that the kids would have had to make a decision. They're either in this or they're not in this. They're going to get laughed at. They're going to get jeered. They're going to get abused by people that were just like blaspheming them probably and telling them how crazy they were. But it made them make a commitment. And so Noah had a living faith, and it drove him to be involved. And that example that he had of his commitment to God had an impact on his wife, his kids, right? Because we're constantly told that what God did is he saved Noah and those who were with him. It was Noah and those who were with him. It's always Noah was the emphasis, because Noah had found grace in the eyes of the Lord. So God saved just 4 human couples out of all this. And yet you look at the idea here that God saves, a lot of times he saves families for the sake of these committed parents. That makes a difference in God's mind. He works with families. He's trying to encourage us to work with our families. And so he does, for many times, he calls our children in as part of his election. And he blesses the fact that he's working with our families. That's something we can be thankful for. It's not an entitlement at all. And when people start to think it's an entitlement, then that's when God has to say, well, look at, you're going to have to see some examples of where it doesn't work. And I'm going to bring in other people, and I'm not going to call your children, because he doesn't want us to think that in any way we deserve it or we're entitled, or it's because of all the work we did. That's what Paul covers in God's election in Romans chapter 9. But as parents, we've got to lead by example. We've got to be like Noah. You imagine today that Noah would be doing the Bible readings at home. You'd be building up your ecclesia. You're working with your people, witnessing to those around you as to why you're involved in this project and what you think God's going to do and what's coming on the earth, visiting the sick people and doing things for others. And above all, acknowledging the work of God in your life, telling people how much God has done for me, how he's changed me into a different person. And talk positively about your ecclesia, about the Bible, about the Bible concepts. This is what God's looking for, and this is what makes an impact on the other people around us when we keep up positive things like that going on. So God gave Noah's family lots of time to think. You think about this. God could have quickly brought a flood. He could have brought a flood that would have wiped out the earth in a week. Imagine you got water covering the earth for like take the 40 days and 40 nights. He could have stopped the rain after 40 days and 40 nights and drained it all off, and everybody would have been dead. But he keeps them in the ark for 1 year, 17 days. Over a year they're in there. And you can imagine what this did with Noah's family. They had time to just think and to meditate over the fact that they were going to be the only ones left. And what is God doing? And why did he save us? And what of an impact that would have had on them when they come out of the ark? Hopefully a good one, to make them more committed than ever of what God had done. So there are some great lessons that come out of Noah and his family, that we've got to continue strong in the faith, even in the midst of a corrupt generation. We got to keep witnessing, whether or not we get any converts. But we've got to keep our faith strong, even though those around us and the world at large may be going downhill. We got to get our families involved in ecclesial projects, get them involved in ecclesial things. Don't wait until our children are like 50 years old to think that they're finally mature enough to get involved in ecclesial life. There's a lot of things they can do for us in this day and age, especially right now when we're depending upon Zoom and all these technical things, these technologies things that we have going on. Yeah, I heard the CME, the group that hosts the CME Hills website that we use for cmehills.org, that whole group got hacked, and our website was involved as well. But we have young people who know how to do these things, how to fix them, how to rebuild them, and we just have to tap into what our youth can do for us in ecclesial life today, and realize they can do a lot. So get our families involved in these ecclesial projects, and that's what's going to generate commitment to them, to God. And for all of us, let's make time for God this week. Don't let the world eat up all your time. You get through the whole day and realize, wow, the whole day went by today, and I never even took time to pray other than for my food, or I never took time to do any Bible classes, or nothing to feed my spiritual life. Because the people of Noah's time, they made this huge mistake of getting their lives so busy that God wasn't influencing their minds, and instead the mind of the flesh was taking over. And we don't want that to happen to ourselves or to our families. And the Son of Man is coming at an hour we don't expect. So we've got to be ready all the time. It could be any time. And we're not going to get a whole lot of time, like even Lot, at least he had overnight to get some people together. When the angels come to call us to the judgment seat, it may be over right then, and there is no time to make a difference in somebody's life. So we've got to get it done now before the doors of the ark close. And those are all good lessons that come out of Noah's life, of being careful about.